Welcome to ThinkSmart with TMFG. Today I have special guest John Iaconetti on. How are you doing, John?
Doing pretty well, Mike. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to today's episode.
Today we're going to talk about, I originally called it the top 10 innovations in history, then I found out it's hard to limit it to top 10, so there turned out to be a few more. Right now, AI is such a big topic. That's all we talk about is AI. This is AI. Everyone, you can't involve any conversation without it starting with the influence of AI now. So that's a big thing on innovation. But I want to tell a story. I was away last week and I went over I was in Spain. I got a tour of a winery and it was quite interesting. They talked about a magnificent winery. It was huge. They had all these areas and all these special rooms. They had 41 kilometers of tunnels underground in this winery. And if you can imagine that, and there was all these rooms where they would store the wine. And they talked about the story of how it used to work. When the wine is stored, this was, I believe, for the champagne, they keep it upside down, and the idea is the sediment would fall to the bottom of the champagne bottles. And after a while, there was a guy. Well, first of all, there was a guy who had to go, or girl, would go in, and they had to turn the bottle a quarter turn every few days. And the idea was to make sure the sediment from the wine would go in, and there was thousands of bottles. They produced millions of bottles of wine a year. If you can imagine these people's jobs were actually going in and turning bottles a quarter turn each day to adjust how the sediment fell. And after that, the person would go in and they would have to, for the champagne, all the sediment would build up to be about an inch on the bottom. And they found some skilled people, and their job was to rip the little cap off and throw a cork, let the sediment fall out, and throw a cork on quickly before they lost more champagne than sediment. And they said they had to find very skilled people with fast hands to do this job.
It's got to be a better way.
There has to be a better way. So they talked about, now this is all fully automated. So they have things that hang the bottles upside down and do the rotation and automatically take out the corks and take off the cap, put the new corks on, let the sediment drain more efficiently and everything. But you wonder how this worked over time as these new innovations. Of course, some people were saying it's not as good. We're losing jobs. The wine turner guy is going to have nothing to do. So
exactly.
It's funny. This innovation always has some resistance against it. So let's go and talk about innovation. So what have you come up with, John, over time?
Well, I mean, in terms of the innovations that we're going to be discussing today, it's going to be very similar, I guess, in terms of the way AI is more or less turning the economy up on its head, where AI is impacting a lot of industries around the world. The innovations we're going to be talking about today are going to be very similar, right? And you can go as far back as, caveman days and the wheel being invented, having that kind of change everything at that point. But even into more recent history.
I can't imagine there being resistance against the wheel. Do you think there was someone who walked up and had a square thing they were pushing along and said, "Hey, I don't want that wheel coming around"?
I'd rather do it the old-fashioned way and
Joe
pick it up on my back.
This,
I would hope there was less resistance on the wheel, but that's human nature. Some people don't like change. So, but even I guess as time went on, even into the printing press, like that was absolutely huge in the form of communication and how information got shared across generations.
Well, the big thing before the printing press. It was very difficult a book had to be handwritten before there was the printing press. And the first of all, the only people who had the ability to do that were generally the monks. So most books had some religious connotation to them because they had to be passed through the religious areas where the monks would write these books because they'd sit in their temples and they'd have the time to write out a book. The other thing was that a book wasn't a very expensive thing. A book, if you were a family, it would be tough to afford a book a year because it was a big deal. The printing press opened just communication and knowledge to everyone and let it not be put out by the churches. So that was a big change in total society.
And to your point, the affordability and the access for the average person to have access to it, changed a lot. And speaking in that realm, where originally it was the book or the printing press, back in the 1400s, more into the 1990s, the access of internet, right? And that's become a more digital access to a lot of these different sources and books kind of put into one spot where all you have to do is search, a keyword and you get all the information that you possibly want through the form of Google or what have you.
And the control factor got taken out of individuals and put to the mass public. Again, as we talked about with books, it got put out to the masses. Internet allowed the control no longer be done by companies who wrote the books. So it really did open up communication in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was more, I guess, in the along the lines of technological advances that improved education. There's also been a lot of technological advances and innovations through science and medicine. Even just the sheer germ theory of disease, having that understanding of how germs get passed. Well, so we went through a pandemic in 2020, so I feel like everyone should be up on that. But just having that basic hygiene and medicine and how that's changed public health in Canada and America and first world countries.
It's funny when I watch a lot of these. I was on a plane, so I watched Game of Thrones or the second
Yeah,
one, right?
yeah.
And it's funny how many people would die in childbirth.
Yeah.
Right. And it was a common thing because if something went wrong, every time you hear someone who say, a lot of people will have C-sections of that now, that used to be a mother and baby dying.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the ability to do surgeries. They didn't understand germ disease. So it was very hard for them to do a surgery at that time when you fully don't understand how that works. So that's massive advancements.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in line with that, or going into the kind of the next big innovation, even antibiotics like penicillin, being able to treat once deadly diseases just with a simple form of medication, just to kind of stop it right there, right?
My dad was born in the 20s, and he had tuberculosis, and he was put in a sanitarium for about 3 or 4 years. And basically at that time, it was just when penicillin was penicillin had been out in the 20s and 30s, but it hadn't been made it over to places like Ireland and things like that. It wasn't a common ability. And it came out, and he said the only reason he was alive is because penicillin came around.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, just how far medical science has gone, and, even to this day, seeing how quickly people can have a surgery that's non-invasive and be out the same day. And back onto rehabilitation. I guess that was kind of the medical side of things. I guess in regards to the industrial changes that we've gone through, just in the form of combustion engines or heavy machinery. The fact that we're able to mass produce products as fast and as efficiently as we have has really changed overall the economy as a whole.
The internal combustion engine was huge, what they could do with it. And now we're moving back to electric cars.
Yeah.
It's funny whenever. Most people would know it, but Tesla, why they call it Tesla was the inventor of basically alternate current electricity. At that time, you had a great inventor, Edison, around who came up with great things, but he didn't understand this AC idea for current, and everything was done in direct current at that time. Direct current can only travel so far. It's hard to have power lines that can carry DC voltage around. So this idea of coming up with this alternating current motor allowed electricity to travel through, we have electricity to travel right across the entire country now where everyone can use. So it was a massive innovation in our ability to do things.
Yeah. Going back to that, being able to share with the masses, having those advances where it's not just a few people that have access to it, that kind of leads into the next category where even in the form of communication comes in all shapes and sizes, but from the telegraph to the telephone, the radio, and into TV and television, I guess now into streaming and all that. Being able to communicate has really advanced, I think, in the last 20 years or so. You can just quickly pull up something on your phone and see what's going on the other side of the world. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and as you move through these, you can see how much quicker they move. When we started with the wheel to the next thing, there was 1,000 years between it. When you start to move between telegraphs, telephones, every time it goes to the next layer, it seems to happen at a faster pace.
Yeah.
I forget which law was it. Ohm's law. There was one law on how fast the computer chip continues to increase, and it's continued to go at that level on how fast we can actually compute things now.
Yeah, it's becoming pretty incredible. Like you said, things are getting smaller and faster and more efficient.
It was funny. My daughter asked me the other day. She said, "When you used to have to drive places, did you use maps, Dad?" and it was something that was foreign to her because she's driving now and everything's just on GPS. I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, what did you do?" I said, "You had a map in the back of your car. You take it out and you open it up and you pick out where you're going." She said, "Well, how do you figure out?" I said, "Well, you'd write down all the streets and you'd go and follow them down and you'd end up." And she had no clue on how we got anywhere, but we seem to make it go. But right now, life is so easy. I use Waze.
So simple.
I just go Waze where I even tell where I don't have to write it anymore. I just tell where I'm going, and it just tells me what to do.
Yeah, exactly. It could not be any easier. I remember fond memories of doing a road trip down to Florida and having the big map right across the windshield and trying to figure out your way. Like you said, now it's just as simple as follow the line on your car, and that's about it. So, and even, to that point, satellites and GPS, even beyond just your regular navigation, even just in terms of being able to communicate even across the world through satellites, or being able to get images back at the Earth, like it's done so much for us.
And much that's from the military, but it's really come the military's work to really help us out at home. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, I mean, now that we've kind of gone through those, there's just also some foundational human innovations that really push things forward. One of them just being strictly agriculture. Started from like very early days of just, based on soil and based on the sunshine, that determined where people would begin farming, and that determined where civilization would begin. But even through agriculture, even more recently, one of our clients is running a greenhouse, and just being able to walk into that greenhouse and see how fast and efficient that they can produce lettuce in Ontario. It's just absolutely mind-blowing how technology has really taken off.
People hate this genetics idea, but they do. Genetics in plants are stunning what they can grow now in any type of area. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some bad parts about how they do things, but to be able to feed many people in, let's say, environments that would never provide food before, just through altering the genetics of plants so they can actually grow in those areas, it gives, it helps to... There's not as much problems with food in the world as there was 30 years ago, I'll put it that way. And our population has grown by, if you look in the last 30, 40 years, the world population continues to grow. Without that, you'd have severe problems.
Yeah.
And maybe even big one we forget to talk about. One of the, I guess, the biggest innovations they say of all time is plumbing.
Yeah.
It seems like a simple thing, but there was tons of disease and problems before they had plumbing.
Yeah.
Disease was rampant. So having indoor plumbing available to people, or even outdoor plumbing, having the ability to go and take care of that in a sanitary way, is one of the biggest innovations we've ever had.
Like you said, it feels like it's taken for granted, but to your point, right, the mixing of wastewater and drinking water, and really that was big cause for a lot of issues for the human population. So we're a financial company, so we should probably talk about the financial side of things.
Yeah, there's so many innovations they have in our industry.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for 30 years, and it was funny. It's hard, because you've been doing it for less of a time, so it's hard to imagine. My first job here was going through the newspaper and going and checking the price of every mutual fund, and then calling every company to find out how many shares every client I had a meeting with had this week. We didn't have any computer that would tell us that. I'd have to call and talk to each individual fund company, give them a client social insurance number, get the shares, put it in. I think I mentioned before, it was a Lotus sheet before Excel existed to try to figure out what someone had as far as their assets goes. So that's gone so far. Even things along the way as mutual funds have come up. I mean, Templeton, I think, was the first mutual fund back in the 50s, but they continued to advance over time, which allowed people, a simple person with not a ton of knowledge, to have a fully diversified investment.
Yeah.
And, we've put that to an extreme now where we use companies that buy the whole world. So our portfolios have, close to 11,000
more than that, 13,000 now.
Yeah. 13,000 holdings inside a portfolio. That was unfathomable if you go back 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Other things that we talk about is, even now with accounts, there used to be stock certificates. People used to have to hold on to their stock certificate. If they want to sell a stock, they have to bring in a certificate. You have to send it to the person. It was a very cumbersome ordeal to trade anything. Everything is handled through the institutions now.
Yep.
And there's all trading platforms allow everything happen very seamlessly.
Yeah, the efficiency and to your point, how quickly and accessible it's become for a lot of people to be able to do any sort of transactions, any sort of savings. Computers obviously plays a very big role in that, in everything from the stock ownership to the mutual fund ownership. That's played a pretty big role. And now for us as planners, even the ability now to project out into the future. Previously using NaviPlan. And now making the switch over to Conquest, which is our new financial planning software, it gives us the ability to really project out and plan and give a thumbs up or a thumbs down whether someone will be able to retire with just a simple projection.
And what they do is we started this off by talking about artificial intelligence, but these new programs bring that into the program, which gives you enormous capacity in what you can actually do. And even with people with corporations and businesses, it's amazing what you can actually go and project. It's 100 times what, we started a very long time with financial planning. We've probably been going 25 years doing financial plans. We were one of the first. We used to use a very simple program, which was, I think was put out by, I think the company was McKinsey at the time. They created a STAR. It was some type of financial program that did a quick financial plan, but it kept on advancing. And I think the key that you have to do is, as these advancements come, there's always a learning curve to taking on these new technology and the new advancements. But when you embrace that technology rather than fight it, it can make for an incredible experience.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's really one of those extra pieces, especially with AI, that just assist in really reducing the time or making things a lot more efficient in order to get the job done. People always think AI can replace, even there's a concern AI can replace certain jobs or things like that. You'll always need, humans around. It's just an assistant, I guess, in that sense.
It's a tool like anything else.
Exactly.
I can give you all the tools that a bricklayer does, but I don't want you to put up a wall, right? It's a similar type of thing. And as I begin to, continue to use these new programs and I see the complexity behind what's required on the input of them, I realize that, it's not a do-it-yourself. If you want something that's done well, there's great AI tools, but they're not really do-it-yourself tools. Yeah. And it's really many of them are meant for the professionals to help the professionals do a better job at bringing things to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that brings us to another episode of ThinkSmart with TMFG, and thank you very much.